Hello and welcome to the Nanonanofilm Improv podcast. I'm Dave Heron. This podcast is about my trials and tribulations associated with improv comedy and doing it, performing it, rehearsing it. So this is really a cathartic outpouring of the things that I've learnt, the things that I'm struggling with, and an opportunity to share with you and hear from you also some of the things that have worked for you, and equally there'll be some things on this podcast that you have tried that don't work for you. It's all very subjective. My experience level is, well, I've had a few years experience doing improv. I've taught a bit of improv. I've performed with a whole range of exciting and talented improvisers and learnt from sets that have gone well and sets that haven't gone well. And this is all part of an evolution for me as well. So you're very welcome in joining me on this podcast. So this week I wanted to talk about warming up before doing an improv set, and this reflection for this particular episode of that Nanonanofilm Improv Comedy Podcast, there's the first plug of the episode. This reflection comes about from a number of gigs that I've done recently where I have felt a sense of frustration. I've felt it's been a little dry for the first 5, 6, 7 minutes where I'm trying to find my way into the improv set. And a number of my fellow improvising chums in We Are Dave also have recently felt the same. And we reached a very quick conclusion that it was because we had done very little warm-up beforehand, or indeed any warm-up beforehand. And this had been happening for a number of sets, either a small little one that we might have had the fortune of being able to do at Hoopla, or a set at a big festival. We were just not warming up enough beforehand. Now, there's plenty of, I guess, podcasts and Substack writings on the whys and wherefores of warming up. But what hasn't, I don't think, been written is the sense of frustration, why that's important. Clearly, we know that athletes in sports have to warm up because physically the muscles have to warm up before doing anything. Otherwise, you can cause injury. But why do we need to necessarily warm up before doing a set? And what does it make me feel when I do warm up versus when I don't warm up? And I think that's probably the first starting point that I wanted to say, was that I have felt a sense of frustration and not enjoyment before I eventually guess I warm up during the scene, to coin the phrase. I've felt frustrated that I haven't been able to get into it as quick as I wanted to do. And the first thing that I felt frustrated about is I haven't been able to find the funny. Now, I know purists in improv will probably say, well, you don't have to find the funny. It's not about the funny in improv scenes. I know that, but it is about being playful and enjoyment, in my opinion. And I think I just haven't found that because just haven't warmed up necessarily. So I've spent quite a while trying to get to the playful funniness in the scene rather than having that right from the off. The other thing that I've felt as well with a lot of this is that I felt because of the day that's happened beforehand, either I'll be playing video games all day, or I'll be in intense meetings at work all day, or I might have gone out and done something else, watched a film. Because of the nature of what I've done for the rest of the day, it takes me a bit of time to remove myself from the sort of the video gaming or the intense analysis at work that I've been doing, or whatever it happens to be, to get into the nature of improv, i.e. the removing all of that over-analysis and filtering that you would do in every other sort of facet of your life, removing those sort of filters. And that's what the warm-up, I think, has been helpful for as well, is it hasn't, when I haven't warmed up, I haven't been able to remove the day that I've had already and the filters that one almost always puts into life anyway. So that's been a sense of frustration as well. And coupled with that, it just aids decompression from work. I mean, we in We Are Dave have almost always come straight from work. I know Mikey always comes straight from work, and most of his rehearsals take place in a suit. Although I think that's possibly because his cupboard wear is nothing but Charles Tyrwhitt suits. And there's a plug. I'm not getting paid for that, just thought I'd plug it. But that's the thing, is we come to rehearsals straight from work. There's no decompression time. And again, if you look at some of the science behind kids, for example, coming back from school, they need decompression time before you kind of engage with them. And I think it's the same thing here. If you want to engage in a totally different activity, you need some sort of buffer zone between work and doing an improv scene. And the warm-ups, I think, should help kind of span that chasm between the two. And then finally, to be completely honest with you, this is kind of where I am with my improv right now. I need to remember how to do improv. I need to remember what's required in the scene. Yeah, sure, I can do the listening bit. I know that when I'm on the back line, I'm listening hard. But actually, what about other things like character work? What about coming in with a true sense of who your character is? What about coming in with not having a conflict at the beginning? These sorts of things, I'm still at the very beginning of my journey with improv. And so I need to remember how to do improv, and the warm-ups help me do that. So that's kind of it, really, I think, from a warm-up perspective, in the terms of how I feel about it. I feel frustrated that there is these kind of mental blockers that need to be unpicked before an improv scene begins to take shape in the way that I feel comfortable and playful in. And so that's kind of the essence I wanted to talk about with respect to doing warm-ups. What I also wanted to talk about was the type of warm-up as well. And again, you'll see on many podcasts, Substacks, emails, listings, etc., around the different types of improv exercises that you can do. But one of the things I have tried to think about is tailoring the improv exercise or the warm-ups for what we're specifically going to be doing. Now, I've talked before about the under 11s or under 12s football, but I'll give you another example of that. My son has played football in a football team. In fact, two different football teams, because they're two different ages. Anyway, you don't need to know that. The point is, they play in a football team. And my youngest son plays as a defender. But their warm-ups before every match are practice shooting into the... not shooting, sorry, to be clear. They're not handed automatic rifles. I mean shooting. I mean practice kicking a football into a goal. Just for the Americans who might be listening, who maybe don't understand and think there's some sort of weird subset cult of that we're trying to get children. Anyway, the point is that they are practicing shooting the ball into the goal beforehand. But my son's a defender, and he's been told never pass the halfway line, because you always need to be back to cover defensively. So what sort of warm-up is that for him? He will never take a shot on goal. So we see the same sort of thing happening in other sports as well. When I watch rugby, and I've talked about rugby before, you have your forwards and your backs. And the forwards are always involved with the scrum. They're doing the big tackling and that sort of thing. And the backs are kind of doing the running and passing the ball out and normally scoring the tries. That's a huge, huge simplification of it. And it's far more in that. And that's not to say that forwards and backs don't do tackling or don't do scoring of tries. But the point is, there are two different roles in that. And when you watch them play from a professional stance, you'll watch them warm up beforehand. And they are doing different types of warm up depending on what their role is in the team. So it's made me reflect on the fact that actually in an improv set, depending on what we're going to be doing, we need to sort of tailor our warm-up exercise accordingly. And I've started to think about that a lot when I'm doing the We Are Dave rehearsals, or indeed when I'm running classes, is to think about what is the nature of what I'm trying to do here, and building up the warm-up exercises that have the themes that will allow us to kind of do the class properly later on as well. So there are a number of different things that I've been thinking about, particularly with We Are Dave, and some of the warm-up games that I think I tend to use a lot are, to come back to the earlier point I was making around sort of finding the funny, aiding decompression from work, removing over-filtering. Some of the things I've been thinking about, the games I like, are Electric Company, where you have people round in a circle, and basically you have a bit of a beat going, and someone says one word, another person says another word afterwards, and then we go around the circle. Anyway, I'm not going to over-explain the game in this regard because I'm just obviously rubbish at doing it. But it's supposed to be a very quick-fire game that spurts out very funny words that don't make sense, and indeed, some cases, rude words. And that, again, breaks the funniness, breaks the removal of the day, so that you can kind of get into being playful in an improv scene. Other things I like to do as well is character and physical work, reminding myself that I don't just play the same stock character myself, or a posh lady, or Potato, as we possibly talked about before, the little goblin who serves his master. No, I have other characters, and maybe exploring that in the warm-up as well, with accents, with as long as they're politically correct, and with other sort of facets as well that sort of expand my repertoire and remind myself about improv, the other things that I should be doing as well. So, and then the other thing I have as well with that is I have things like touching. We do touching warm-up beforehand. That sounds like it should be an HR reportable offence. But this is about getting comfortable with other improvisers on stage. So sort of holding hands, touching arms, touching the head, and working out what our boundaries are for the day. Again, you'll see many podcasts and email listings and Substack entries on these sorts of things. But again, it's important for a warm-up, particularly before you're about to go on stage. So you remind yourself, in the normal course of everyday life, particularly if I'm at work, I'm not going to be going and holding my colleague's hand. But if I'm doing an improv scene where I'm a wife or I'm a husband to somebody else, then actually it's important that we have that kind of closeness and we can show that on stage as well. So warming up, again, breaking that sort of thing we've been doing throughout the day, having that buffer zone where the warm-up acts to remind ourselves how to do improv in terms of playfulness, physicality, etc. is very, very important indeed, but tailoring that to the improv we're doing as well. So, for example, if we were doing short-form games, then I'd want to do much more sort of quick-fire exercises rather than sort of drawn-out things, drawn-out scenes or drawn-out warm-up exercises. I'd want quick-fire sort of things as well, for example. So those are the kind of things that I've been thinking about a lot recently, and what I really want to do is get back to doing proper warm-ups for one, planning those warm-ups as well. I'm really rubbish at that. I'm really, really rubbish at planning what the warm-up should be for the rehearsal that's coming up. And again, that's something I want to get much better at, because I've realised now the absolute criticality of doing warm-ups. It's not a 5-minute job beforehand, checking in on admin or boundaries or stuff like that. It's about having dedicated time beforehand where you and your group are untouched by everyone else, and you're getting into your zone. You're becoming playful. You're forgetting about your day. You're removing all the filterers, and you're actually remembering how to do improv and the things that you've learned in classes, courses and workshops. So that is going to be my major focus, I guess, going into 2026 now, is ensuring that when I'm doing a set, we get proper dedicated warm-up time too. So those are my reflections on warm-ups. Do you do warm-ups in the groups that you're in? How often do you do them? Do you spend a lot of time doing them? In which case, do you focus on specific activities or exercises? Or do you just do the ones that you guys just find fun? Or do you not do any warm-ups at all? And if not, do you find them useful or not? Or are you just somebody who can just get straight into the improv and not worry about the day that you've had? I'd be really keen to know what your thoughts are on warm-ups. So thanks very much for listening to the Nanonanofilm Improv podcast, and I'll catch you in the next one.